Welcome back to The Pulse, where we focus on all things people, power, and politics. And this week, a lot of big news stories happening concerning all of those things. Joining us tonight to talk about some of those headlines is Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Dingell and the mayor of Troy, a Republican, Ethan Baker, even as the mayor is a nonpartisan role. But we thank you both for your perspective here tonight. It's always good to see you. Congresswoman, I heard you on a piece of what you had said on CNN earlier, worried that our democracy could be on fire. I thought that was an interesting comment that you made. Which circle of news are you speaking of when you say this, as we are drinking from a fire hose with the news?
Well, we were talking about redistricting, actually, as we were saying it. And look, I am somebody who believes in working across the aisle, treating everybody with respect. And I think, by the way, we've lost all boundaries, and people are doing and saying things which just cross all lines. But having said that, what is happening with redistricting across the country, trying to stack elections, a president trying to take mail-in ballots away, which disenfranchises seniors, active military, those with disabilities, etc. At some point, you got to fight fire with fire.
But Congresswoman, wouldn't you say that the redistricting issue has been around as long as politics? I mean, we've been talking about this for a long time. It's happened under other administrations, including some Democrats, wouldn't you say?
It has never happened the way that it is happening now, where Donald Trump, President Trump, be respectful, is going into states and telling them that they must gerrymander and change districts because they're worried about losing the election next year. And the surest sign of that is this week when he said he wanted to rebrand what he calls the big, beautiful bill, and I have a lot of other adjectives I would use.
I know you do, and you've used a couple of those adjectives on this show, but I do want to ask you about the Texas redistricting and Ethan Baker, the mayor of Troy. When you look at this, I guess what I'm trying to say is that we know that gerrymandering's been around for a long time. We know people have been doing this a long time. I think the Congresswoman is making it clear that the way in which a president exercises his power in this case by going out in the way he did to do this is wrong. As a Republican, what do you think?
Yeah, but no, I respect what the Congresswoman has just said, and I think traditionally she's absolutely right. That's the way we've always done this in this country. Yes, there's redistricting every 10 years, and gerrymandering happens, but to have it happen kind of thrown upon certain states in the middle of a decade seems a little bit strange. So as a Republican, you know, I respect the concept of, if this is a political game, if we're playing games to try to win at all costs, then you know what the president's doing makes a lot of sense to me, in all honesty. But it does really change the norms of what we're dealing with. And we talk about fighting fire with fire, but we all burn when we fight fire with fire, right? And I think that's what the Congresswoman's fear is when she makes those comments.
I want to talk for a moment about fire with fire, because Gavin Newsom actually has said this, the governor of California, which, by the way, we could have a whole conversation about the redistricting efforts that he would like to put into place to balance all of this out. But let's talk for a moment about what he's been doing. We talk about when they go high, when they go low, we go high, according to Michelle Obama. I've read a lot of interesting articles recently of people who are saying, this isn't the time to play that, we're going to go high. You need to go as low, and Gavin Newsom is doing that. What do you think about it?
First of all, I want to tell you, if I have one message that I've heard, people are worried about high costs, etc., but you know how many town halls I've done this month? People are mad, and they do think that we cannot unilaterally disarm ourselves. They are worried about the state of our democracy, and they want to see people fight. And look, in Michigan, I want to make clear, we do have the people spoke. We have a commission that does the redistricting every 10 years. We have fair and balanced seats in this state, and our congressional delegation reflects the presidential vote. But at some point, you can't just sit quietly while you watch democracy. We are watching freedom of speech, freedom of press.
So what do you think about Governor Gavin Newsom putting on a red hat saying Gavin Newsom was right about everything, tweeting back, or I guess social truthing everything back to President Trump of what he said, using his own language? Does that work?
Look, I don't like where we are, but I think you got to fight fire with fire, and I'm going to protect our democracy.
Let's talk for a moment about the powers of this president as they stand. The president saying, let's go ahead and take some of these federal efforts and put them into Chicago. You heard the governor today, Ethan Baker, say, not in my backyard. How much power does this president think he has versus how much he actually has to do the things that he wants to do?
a president has as much power as they take until they're stopped from taking it. That's the reality of our system, and that's not always the best way to look at it, but it's a reality, I think. So I think he feels like he's having some success in D.C. with what he's doing with the National Guard. I don't think it's the same equation in any other city in this country. We've talked a little bit before about how D.C. is different, right? There are federal people involved in the lawmaking in D.C. Going into Chicago is a little bit different. Again, I wouldn't like it if someone came into Troy and the president said, we're just sending troops there. On the flip side, people are terrified of crime. Regardless of the stats coming down or not, whatever stats you're looking at, it doesn't matter. If one person in the neighborhood has some kind of violent crime against them, that's what those people feel. And the congressman, you spoke very much in 2016 and 2024 about, hey, remember what's going on. People don't always assume what you hear in the polls or the stats are what's right. And you spoke about it as it related to President Trump. It's the same thing with crime. It doesn't matter that the stats are going down. People are afraid. Crime remains an issue in this country. And, if they see National Guard on the streets, some people are going to feel really comforted by that.
Congresswoman, is that a problem that the Democrats had in terms of messaging when the Harris-Biden campaign said, you don't have to worry about your money. Our economy is doing fine. You don't have to worry about crime. There's no big crime issue. When, in fact, people felt differently than what these numbers are saying. Is there a dissonance there that these politicians need to listen to?
Look, I'm gonna say several things. One, people want to be safe, and I say that to everybody. And safety is they want to be safe on the streets. They want economic safety. They want their job to be safe. People want to be safe, and we have to take that on. We got to hear it. And not everybody said, we all knew that the economy was a problem last year. People were paying too much at the grocery store. And by the way, their prices have gone up. Their utility costs that he promised to reduce 50% are going up, just as an aside. What I worry about is the militarization of law enforcement. We need policing in this country. People need to be safe. But our military is to protect us from enemies abroad. So we've got to be very careful about what is happening and how it is happening. But everybody, I don't care who you are, has a right to feel safe. We need to be investing. The president could be helping local levels of government who need help supporting their law enforcement.
So is there a better way to do this instead of militarizing, but rather give funds and policing help in some way to these cities that need it?
Well, a couple things. The funds always come with strings, so it depends what strings those funds come with. I think the other aspect of it is it's been extremely difficult to hire police officers in this country.
It's a real issue.
Going back 5-10 years especially. It's a little better in the city of Troy, for example, but even in Troy, where we're not Detroit, we're not Baltimore, we're not D.C., Chicago with those levels of violent crime, it was a struggle for us to hire good quality police officers.
Sure.
So all the money in the world doesn't solve that problem. So perhaps, I understand the need of a National Guard helping out sometimes maybe isn't such a bad thing, but if there's a crime bill that comes out of D.C. that gives some funding to locals to help with that, yeah, I'm all for it if it's got the strings that are appropriate.
Mayor Ethan Baker and Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, great to see you both. Thank you for joining us here on The Pulse. We appreciate both your perspectives. So more to come, of course, on all these topics we're talking about. An ongoing conversation on this show every night. And now an ongoing conversation about cracking down on deep fakes. The new law signed in Michigan when it comes to AI and fake sexualized videos of real people. We're hearing from a tech expert on those protections. You're watching The Pulse on Fox 2.
Fox